everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for August 21st. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I'm here today to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 26 live feeds. It was day 36 in the house, and there's more talking, more maybe flipping. There's some stuff to talk about here, and with me to talk about it is Cory. How you doing, Cory?
Doing all right, Taran. I had a question for you. Do you prefer podcasting with a guest or being more of like a lone wolf?
You know, I really enjoy, I know this might sound weird as a podcaster, maybe as a player of Big Brother as well, that I just enjoy being by myself. If I had the HOH room, I'd just always have it to myself. I'd probably just spend a lot of time by myself, not talk. I feel like that's the best way to play the game.
Well, Taran, let me say, you're never alone when you're with God.
Luckily.
Mhm.
Yes. All right. Plenty to talk about from yesterday. Some comedy, some strategy. So let's get into it. Of course, Tucker is the HOH. He nominated Brooklyn, Cam, and Quinn. He then won the veto, used it on Quinn to put up Chelsea, much to the chagrin of T-Core and Chemo. So that's where the nominations stand. But of course, T-Core and Chemo, they talked the day before about, should we keep Chelsea over Cam since we want Chelsea to stay. They also even mentioned after T-Core had a conversation with Brooklyn about keeping the women around, maybe what would it look like to even try to keep Brooklyn over Cam? So that is what we need to pay attention to this week is given that T-Core and Chemo have done this before, will they try to do something similar again and take a shot and flip this vote? That's what we're paying attention to.
Yeah, and I feel like T-Core and Chemo, we've talked a lot about their procrastinating habits, but they've also learned a lot of bad lessons because they fully got away with it last week. The problem is, as these like assignments get harder and harder, it's eventually going to blow up on them. Flipping the vote this week is a lot higher level of difficulty than flipping the vote last week. And if they wait for that same like post AI arena flip time, I'm just excited to watch it, I guess.
Yeah. Um, it's also like, for what it's worth, MJ winning the AI arena competition was like not like that was like one of the more likely AI competition outcomes. Whereas Cam winning, which is the reverse, the thing that would make the flip not happen, is probably a little bit more likely to happen. So it's like this scenario they're planning for is perhaps not quite as likely to happen. But um, we'll talk about it. So we start the day. Really, Rubina. We've talked about this. Not the biggest fan of Joseph. Not the biggest
No,
Joseph fan.
is anybody a big fan of Joseph in the house? Outside, I guess Tucker. You
Tucker,
got him, but it's just super interesting. Of like, Joseph is everyone's eighth favorite person in the house, which
pretty
could
much.
be a lot worse. But there's only so many times until you're in the final eight, and then you're targeted. So again, like you've talked yesterday on the roundtable, how he's probably the best strategic player in the house, the most active strategic player. He very well could be the worst social player, or at least bottom two or three.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And for one of the things that stood out to me is him talking about how he strategically isolates himself, which I don't love that. I feel like he does that too much, right? Like it's so much that people don't feel like they have a solid connection with him other than Tucker. And when he does then actually talk to people and hang out with people, like for instance, Cam, it becomes very obvious that he's doing that. Joseph is hanging out with Cam more because he's trying to pull Cam in, knowing that Cam is going to stay in his mind. And because he very rarely does socialize all that much, it's like a blaring alarm to anyone that is suspicious of Joseph. Oh, look at him hanging out with Cam all of a sudden. Like that's so unusual.
Yeah, I think Joseph's just rationalizing. I think it's been a lot of social interaction for him. This obviously isn't his normal way of existing. And then when he spends time alone, he's trying to justify it strategically. I don't think there's a strategic justification. I think he's just tired, and I get that. The problem is he also has the accompanying mustache, and every time he talks to people, he just seems suspicious, which I know a lot about. So like I can empathize with Joseph, but when people talk about his ego, there also is that element of like he's playing the game in his own head. So when he's just sitting there doing nothing, he's imagining that everyone else is thinking about him. When the truth is, like, if they are, it's usually not a good thing. They're
Yeah.
not like having an outpouring of sympathy. But I just think he's tired, Taran.
I think that's right. I think that's exactly right. Um, so Rubina is suspicious of Joseph, doesn't love Joseph in the game, and is suspicious that Joseph and Tucker might have a final two, some kind of close relationship. She even asks Tucker pretty much straight up about it in the morning. And he not very convincingly denies it. Like, what? What? No.
He's doing the thing to Rabina. He's like, who knows where Joseph's at, but he's definitely not a threat. And he's talking to Joseph, like, who knows where Rabina's at, but she's definitely not a threat. And I think it's becoming very clear exactly what Tucker's endgame is.
Yes, yes, I think so too. Now he does warn Joseph, like, "Hey, Rubina is suspicious of us. She thinks that we're in a final two. I denied it. She is also like not really trusting you. She thinks that you're like a super fan that has all this knowledge." And Joseph is like, "Damn."
Well, I will say, like, it actually isn't that big of a problem because Tucker is telling Joseph, it's not a big deal. I've got Rabina. And he kind of does. The whole idea I was trying to convince people in my season was I know you don't trust America, but I won't let America do X, Y, or Z. Would you have done it?
Mm,
Who knows? As long as Joseph maintains his relationship with Tucker, like, you could do the transitive property alliance, I think.
yes.
Um, like, it only lasts so long, but if it gets you down to final whatever, I think we take it.
It's a tricky formula, where, like, somebody like Tucker who has allies who dislike each other, it's like, how do you maintain that grouping? Because it benefits you to have all of those people in, especially if they dislike each other, but you don't want them to dislike each other so much that they actually go after each other, but then you also don't wanna, like, do the, like, Danielle Donato thing in season 22 and, like, make them love each other and then work with each other more than you. So not that that would happen in Tucker's case, but honestly, in Tucker's case, he probably should just be trying to get them to trust each other as much as possible because they're always going to be more loyal to him.
It's a very scary position for Joseph because Rabina's got people backing her. Rabina has T-Core and
Exactly.
Chemo. It's great to have like your final two be a bigger threat than you. You sit next to them on the block, they go home. But when that final two person is a comp beast, you could very easily just get like caught in the middle of something, caught in the fray, a stray bullet hits you. And I feel like Joseph is so much more vulnerable to that than someone like Rabina because Rabina can get votes. Joseph is so easy for everyone in the house but Tucker to just let go.
Yeah. Um. All right. So shifting gears. You kind of mentioned it earlier. MJ has her own kind of journey through the day. She's just continuing to exist.
On all four camps.
And man, so okay, it's a little hard to like fully get into MJ's mind, but she's kind of learned that she was betrayed by Chelsea in Brooklyn. But MJ, since Matt left, has been so socially isolated, and not isolated in the way that like that like outcasts often are, where like nobody ever talks to them. It's because she's there, like, because you can tell that she's very used to like not being isolated in any way. So she's perfectly fine to like just put herself in situations, even when she's not like somebody that people particularly want to be hanging out with. She's always there. She's talking to people all the time. It's just that people don't really vibe with her very well, and so she kind of sees that. And the issue is that the people that vibed with her the most, the people that she was able to connect with the most were Chelsea and Brooklyn, primarily through, from her perspective at least, conversations about their faith. And unfortunately for her, Brooklyn and Chelsea don't really like MJ. They were just pretending, and that was an easy way for them to pretend to connect with her. And I'm sure they did actually connect with her on that level, but game wise, they were not connecting with her. And so now she's found out, oh, Chelsea and Brooklyn were playing me, and also everyone wants them out. And so I need to simultaneously like distance myself from them while like talking, like getting in with other people. But at the same time, they're still the only people I really am able to connect with. And so she is still able to, to their face be like, yeah, I'm totally still with you. But she's now also kind of like, well, who am I actually going to talk to now? She's going to try with Leah um, and with other people, but it just doesn't land. Like she just cannot connect with anybody in this house. She is so different from everybody else.
She runs the same script with everyone as well. It's not like she was very upset that no one's willing to talk strategy with her. But if she gave the other person a chance to respond to what she was saying ever, I think there's like a better likelihood of that happening. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy is the way I view MJ's game. If she goes up to everyone and says, no one's willing to work with me, no one's willing to talk to me, and then someone like Joseph, who obviously is willing to scheme with anybody, starts opening up, and MJ's like, you know what? I'm just gonna ride this thing as a lone wolf. And it's like, well, what's my incentive to talk to you strategically then? Like, if you're just going to do this thing solo, and even worse, what she says is, you know what? I trust nobody except Tucker.
Yeah.
And that like shuts the door on any game conversations that half the house wants to have with you.
She tells so many people this, and it's just like, why would you why would you tell somebody else? I don't trust anyone except for Tucker. Like that makes no sense. Not a lot of what she does make sense. Um so I mentioned this last night, but this to me like perfectly is encapsulated by this lengthy discussion she has with Leah in the HOH room when Tucker is like falling asleep, and he definitely falls asleep for real at some points, but is also, I'm sure, like, pretending to be asleep at other points. Um, not that he's not that he's getting any valuable information out of it,
Mm-hmm.
because MJ is just talking about her lone wolf thing, her faith, talking like I did this whole thing last night. She's like, "Oh, let me just show you a Bible passage. Let me just find it here real quick." As she looks for like a minute or two, and then it's, "Oh, this is it," and then reads it. And Leah is like, "Yeah, I'm not really religious much, but yeah, that's chill." And is just literally just sitting there, just like,
It was like a weird like dialogue tree between Leah and MJ, where MJ just kept saying she was a lone wolf, and Leah kept saying she wouldn't lie to someone, and they just kept going back and forth and not responding to each other's statement.
I mean,
And
listen,
Tucker passed out.
I've never seen Leah talk less in a conversation. This is the least interested she's ever been in a conversation. And at one point she even says like, listen, I love that you love God. Basically, she didn't say this. I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing. But like, don't let people use that to manipulate you in this game. And MJ is like, that's a great point, but let me find you another Bible passage that's relevant to that. And she's like, I just feel like, God has me here to be enacting his will. And he will keep me here as long as I can influence the game for him. And so on and so forth.
It's a very kind of dangerous like strategy to use because putting aside the ethical implications, it's Big Brother, whatever. MJ has set herself up to she's either not going to lie to anyone the entire season, which obviously is not good for Big Brother, or if she does lie, everyone's going to be furious at her because she's put her like religion on the line. And these are
God
the
wanted her to
people
lie.
God God wanted her to lie. And Tucker and Leah just a few days ago were talking about all these effing religious people. And so like this is not the right audience. It's a really powerful way to like bond yourself with somebody else, but that bond is like permanent or you're just cementing bitterness. So like I don't think MJ's thinking that deep. She's just very religious. She just has to be more self-aware of who she's talking to.
Mhm. Yeah. Religion in Big Brother, not always super successful as a bonding agent. There was Team Christ back in the day, but apart from that, like, never really been a
I would
huge fan.
say Felicia and Matt was a big
That's
deal.
true.
They would read the Bible together, and I think that really helped Felicia view him as like, oh, he's a good guy. He won't betray me. And I don't think he was reading the Bible as a strategy, but it helps.
Mm. Um, all right. So T-Core is going to talk to Chelsea. There's a lot of T-Core chemo. They both talk to Chelsea. They both talk to Brooklyn. They have very similar conversations that they've been having. But the stuff that matters is that Brooklyn is still saying my targets are Tucker, Quinn, Joseph, and Chelsea is saying my target is who do you want me to target? My target is probably Joseph. Joseph. And then maybe other, not you, definitely not you. It's definitely not you guys. Anybody but you guys is basically my target. And also, I will vote out if I come off the block. I will vote out Brooklyn. You wa Brooklyn because she's the target and I'm not even that like, me and Cam now are kind of the thing, so I will vote out Brooklyn. And also, you guys love Tucker. I'm not even gonna go after Tucker at this point, like, he's chill with me, says Chelsea. And ironically, this is not what T-Core and Kimo want to hear.
It's it's so interesting in Big Brother when you could see exactly what someone's trying to do in their conversation. And I think the biggest red flag she says like, "Who would you target?" She goes, "I would target everyone who's not been on the block." Except you, T-Core. Except you, I would not target. You're the exception to the rule. I would target somebody else other than you. I think Tucker is the HOH. Ultimately, who he wants to go seemingly will go. I think she has the right instinct here, but I almost like Brooklyn's strategy a bit more of saying like, this guy's a problem. You are my people. My final five is T-Core, Chemo, Rubina, me, and Chelsea. Like this is my group moving forward. I want to target Tucker. But it's a ballsy thing to do when you're Chelsea and you think you're probably safe against Brooklyn. You kind of just want to like maintain the status quo, and I think that's kind of what she's trying to do.
Yes. I think, generally Chelsea's strategy is the better one. But with T-Core and Chemo, they kind of operate differently than most players would in this spot. And so it's interesting. So they still do want to keep Chelsea around, and one of the things that she was doing does help, which is that she's saying that she's willing to vote out Brooklyn, which makes them feel like, oh well, if we kept both Brooklyn and Chelsea, Chelsea's already separating from Brooklyn, not realizing that that's obviously not true. Like they would absolutely still be locked in. And if any, and quite frankly, no matter who stays between Brooklyn or Cam, Chelsea's going to be locked in with that person. If you get rid of Chelsea, then you actually could potentially pick up Brooklyn and Cam separately. But Chelsea is a glue that would be stuck to either one of them if she
I
stays.
just don't think it's something to worry about. If Chelsea or Brooklyn stays against Cam, it's going to be because of you. So you should have them in your corner for a while, and it's not like you're a massive comp piece threat that needs to be dealt with. I think it's optimistic them thinking that Brooklyn and Chelsea would target each other, especially when they're talking to each other for 70% of today. Um, but I think they're just trying to justify to themselves. Like they both want to make the move. They're just
Yeah,
trying to get there.
yeah. Lots of those conversations happening. We'll get to sort of the late night debrief that they will often have later. Quinn, I noticed Quinn was doing something. He was catching some heat for this. And this is something I think near and dear to your heart, Corey, that he was very publicly studying some days.
Hmm. Yeah, for inevitably when he's in the final four and the comp pops up. Um, look, I'll defend Quinn here. Everyone knows you're studying the days. Like Quinn is not even trying the Joseph facade. What's the point? What he should do is start to going to his biggest enemies and sharing his strategies for counting the days. That's the full Corey.
That is
So
true.
I don't have too much beef with it. Ultimately, if Quinn gets to a point where he needs to know the days, he has far surpassed every expectation we have.
I feel like there's gotta be a way to, like, just very early on, before anybody has a chance to, just, like, really try to incept, like, an incorrect facts about, like, an incorrect thing,
Mm.
like, I'm a big fan of the like, day 1, or, like, week 1, I'm a big fan of the show. Yeah, the night we move in, that's day 0. They always count that as day 0. So this is our first official day. Like, or even like, yeah, this is our first full day. This is our first official. This is day 1, guys. This is day 1 of the game. And then from then on, only ever study like that. I feel, but I just said it out loud,
I
so
can
like
just
maybe messed it
imagine
up.
you're in the house, Taryn. They're doing the champagne like introductions. You're like, just so everybody knows, everyone
Yeah.
knows for the days comp in the future. But Blue did that on our season a little bit. There was a name of a veto comp none of us knew, and she made up a fake name.
Mm.
Never mattered, but honestly, she might have just thought she knew the name. So who knows?
All right. So, uh, Ticor and Chemo, again, they're going to talk some more during the day. They agree they do want to keep Chelsea over Cam. But they're getting a little concerned. It's not even just Chelsea anymore. They're talking to MJ. They're talking to Lee. All of a sudden, all these people, they're not saying they want to target Tucker anymore. Like, what's up with that? They don't like this. What's going on?
Then Chemo's like, also, I don't want to target Tucker. But it is very concerning. And I think the silver lining for Tucker this entire HOH reign is he got MJ and Leah seemingly
Mhm.
out of nowhere. He's pulled them in. And I think if you're T-Core and Chemo, it's like there was this idea of everyone's going to be targeting Tucker. Eventually, he'll be a shield. And all of a sudden, this shield has 18 shields in front of him. And like the best thing to do, I guess, is pick away one of them. But even then, he still has an army of 3 or 4 others. So like they're in a really tough spot. And I get their idea of let's weaken him any way we can. But I think you got to pick a spot eventually when you're like, okay, maybe I ride with this guy instead of, making my whole game dedicated to getting him out.
I mean, it's again, this is the problem with people compies, with people that can just win so many comps, is that like there's just no way of actually playing with them successfully if you want to win the game. Like you just have to like you can try to use them as a shield, but then other people will have the exact same thought and try to do the same thing, and then everyone will just be falling over themselves to work with this person. And then even if you do decide to flip on them, now they have a different army that they will use against you. It's a very like it's a tricky spot to be in.
I was so sad yesterday. I was on stream talking about like, I think Joseph's best plan is to cut Tucker at 3. like, like that is the most surefire way of just get to part 3. You have a 50-50 shot, vote him out, win the game against Angela. And it's like, it seems ridiculous. And I know Quinn was talking about like, oh, maybe a double eviction is the time to get rid of Tucker. The time to get rid of Tucker is anytime there isn't the AI arena. So
Mhm.
maybe that is a double eviction. But people are talking about, oh, is it too early to comp out? He doesn't have to comp out. Like, not at all. He has half the house is a winning outcome for him. So that's when compies get like dangerously dangerous.
Yeah. Chemo again. Chemo talks to Brooklyn. He has a similar conversation with her that T-Core did the day before. She mentions she's targeting Tucker. She mentions the final 5 that they want to do. Honestly, a lot of repeat conversations throughout the day, including Joseph and Tucker, who talk again about Rubina being suspicious about their final 2. They also, though, very funnily, go over the some of the alliance names in the game so far. And Tucker mentions the 5 Points Alliance, and Joseph is like, "Oh, that's a terrible name." And Tucker's like, "No, it's not. I thought it was a good name. I made that name." Um,
Yeah, from the originator of the fishies slash the tanks slash the fishes. Like, Tucker's great at a lot of things. This is not one of them.
yeah. Um, Now, more interestingly, they talk about Tikor, Chemo, and Rubina, and how Joseph definitely sees them as like a tight 3. And Tucker agrees, and he says, "Yeah, I mean, they're basically like I'm kind of with them in the core of this alliance, the Sixth Avenue. That there's like it doesn't really include you." And Joseph is like, "Well, I mean, that's great and all, but I don't think they're loyal to you. I don't think that Tikor and Chemo actually want to bring you to the end. I think they're gonna wanna take a shot at you at, like, 8 or 9."
Yeah, I think it's good by Joseph. He needs all these people targeting each other because the second they don't have a clear target, he will be the clear target.
Mhm.
The problem with Joseph is like, well, it's actually a good thing. If he gets caught, I don't know how much it hurts his game. Like
They
it won't
already don't
help,
like him and
certainly.
trust him.
So like, and ultimately, if he gets caught, it's still going to be clear to Tucker and to Chemo that they're having these conversations about targeting each other. So again, that's another layer of protection for Joseph. It's a very interesting kind of game where like your social capital is so low that you're kind of playing with house money the whole time, but you're also not on death's door. It's weird to watch, but I do kind of enjoy it.
His only asset in the game is Tucker, right? And so, like, he should be using Tucker as much as possible. Just doing everything he can to use Tucker because, like, if Tucker leaves or once this ends, like, he's got very little else going on. So, I agree. I think just like play it as much as possible.
I think his next step is he needs to just get in with MJ and Leah. Because if that like other side of the Tucker core develops, he's been trying to work with Leah forever. His talk with MJ yesterday, I'm sure we'll get to, or maybe we won't because it was just dreadful.
It was
Angela
dreadful.
hates him. Like he needs to get in with those people because the Takemo, like they're too smart to want to work with Joseph. He needs to work with
Yeah,
these players who just like
I
Tucker.
I agree. I've been saying this for a while. I think Leah is his path to win. Um, but also Leah is a very tricky path.
Yeah,
But honestly, I said the same thing about Tucker, and he managed it with Tucker. So it's possible he manages the Leah thing. And I say that Leah is a tricky path because plenty of people have tried to work with her in the past, but plenty of people are also people like Cam and Quinn, people who are not good at playing with Leah at all. And I think that Joseph is so far doing the best job of it. Still a bit dangerous, still a bit tricky, but definitely possible. MJ is even trickier because I think MJ just like doesn't really like Joseph much. As you said, like Joseph is somebody who is willing to talk with her and talk game with her, but she's like, uh, MJ is very much like, man, I wish people would talk to me. I'm so alone in this game. If anybody could talk to me,
Except for you. Don't talk to me.
except for you, Joseph. Every time you talk to me, I'm mad about it.
well, I don't blame her. She's like, "How do you form the collective?" Joseph's like, "Well, I was thinking whoever's not close to Matt and you, I wanted to bring in."
Yeah.
And it's not a good foundation for this relationship. So like I don't blame her, but also like if you're Joseph, I don't think you got to worry about these people. Tucker kind of has like his I don't know his grasp on them a lot better than he does to Chemo. So like again, can he just bank even further on his connection with Tucker to work with these people? His problem is if Tucker goes, he is stranded.
Yep. Yeah. Not great. Um, Now Tucker has a plan for him. He says, "Listen, if I get taken out, you can fall back to Quinn, and ride to the end with him." It's a very strange thing, and I think it only exists because I do feel like, we've talked about this before, but I do feel like Tucker doesn't love being there, and is a lot, like, more willing to consider, like, "Yeah, and I might just leave, soon or later."
Yeah, if the house flips on him this week and Cam goes, he can't play HOH. I think we're gonna have a lot of Tucker wants to quit all week, and he won't quit because that doesn't happen on Big Brother. But I think
Mm,
there'll be a lot of that going around, and his eventual downfall is just not going to be as satisfying as we think it'll be. The only way we get like a satisfying, he's very upset downfall is if it's like the first member of the jury. If he's like locked there, I think he would like rather be in the house. It's like Suri.
he
Suri
said
was
he would
ready to
quit the
bail.
jury.
He won't. Like Kenny
Right.
said he was gonna. It reminds me a lot of Suri, where like Suri was ready to go before jury after the Jared
Mhm.
after everything. Then the second jury starts, it's like, well, I'm stuck here anyways. Let's do it. If Tucker truly thinks he could leave jury, maybe that won't be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, we did learn that he did, apparently want to quit, tried to quit earlier in the game. They were sort of able to, sort of mask that. We kind of knew.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that part of why he plays so brazenly is because he very much is unafraid of leaving.
Mhm.
And so he's able to say things like, "Yeah, if I leave, just work with Quinn, even though I hate Quinn. Like, whatever. I want you to succeed." So
Joseph's also been playing in Tucker's face about that, where like clearly Tucker and Quinn are targeting each other. Tucker knows it. And Joseph is like, I don't think Quinn would be targeting you. And my dream final 7 or 8 is all of our allies plus Quinn. And I want to work with Quinn. And you should take the Quinn off the block. And for me, as Tucker, it'd be like massive red flags. But maybe Tucker is just like, well, in the event I'm evicted, is a great plan for you, Joseph.
yeah, I mean, Tucker told Rubina that he thinks Joseph has a final two with Quinn. So I think he does think that Joseph has a final two with Quinn. And I think, and I do think that in part, Tim saying this was sort of like confirming to himself, like, Joseph, yeah, just work with Quinn if I leave, right? So we'll see. But yes, Joseph says ideally we get to 8 with 6th Avenue plus Quinn and Leah, which is just the most blatantly obvious thing. But hey, if Tucker's willing to work with him on it, then he's willing to work with him on it. Um, Tucker also lets Joseph know that, like, and this is something that Joseph needs to know, sort of, maybe not something this specific, but the general vibe, which is that, like, people kind of make fun of you sometimes. Like, they're making fun of the way you run, and stuff like that. Like, Joseph kind of needs to know that people aren't really vibing with him. But the way that Tucker did it was felt a little mean.
Yeah, Tucker's like, just so you know, you don't have 5 jury votes locked in,
Right.
Joseph. It is very funny. Like I love self deprecation at the house. I used it a lot, and then it crosses a line, and then you're like, well, it's still funny. Like obviously, it's funny. I love when people make jokes at my expense, but like, it's getting a little bit tired, no? And I feel
Mm,
like that was Joseph's reaction of like his feelings are a little bit hurt. And I think I wouldn't be surprised, Taryn, if today he goes back to his strategy of sulking in a corner to make everyone else feel bad.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, MJ is going to continue to talk to people. As we mentioned, she talks to Joseph, but it doesn't seem to go that well. She then also talks to T-Core. They talk about who to trust again. MJ's just telling people, I trust Tucker the most. And that's certainly not what T-Core wants to hear. Maybe it's what MJ thinks T-Core wants to hear, but it is definitely not. Um, and they start talking about, like, who to vote out, and MJ, as per usual, still just wants to vote with the house. Like, whatever people want, I'm down with. And so T-Core's kinda like, "Well, maybe we're still deciding."
I am very worried of T Core trying to spill anything to MJ because MJ will run to Tucker. MJ's like, I'm a lone wolf, but I want to vote with the pack. Like that's what I want to do. Um, T Core's got to be very careful because I thought the landmine this whole week was Rabina. They're going to try to get Rabina last minute. Rabina's going to go to Tucker. MJ is not even a landmine. Like that is above ground. Like they know that's a trap and they still might use it.
Yeah. Literally says, "This is a trap." Um So we'll see. We'll see about that. There's some more conversation though. Angela is still in the house. She's still doing her own thing. She had a conversation with Brooklyn, but she still wants Brooklyn out for sure. Angela very much like just quietly existing in her newfound position in an alliance, and not blowing it up, which hey is an
Hey,
improvement.
she has to be talked out of it every now and then, though. Like someone has a conversation and she starts spiraling, like, "Why are they lying to me? I don't believe anything they're saying." And someone has to go to her and be like, "They're not lying, Angela. It's cool." And I really look not to berate the stock watch, right? Where's her win equity? That's my whole problem with
That's what
Angela.
I was
She's
saying.
so much long term, short term security, but I'm trying to think of everyone else's win equity, and it's sitting next to Angela at the end. But look, from where she was a few weeks ago, what a life for Angela.
Exactly. Now she has a conversation with Leah, which helped illustrate where Leah seems to stand with the vote, which is that, of course, Angela still wants Brooklyn gone, her competition. Angela says, with Brooklyn gone, Chelsea will fall apart. And Leah says, I don't think so. I think it's the opposite. I think if Brooklyn is gone, Chelsea's going to be able to like weasel her way back in. And that to me speaks volumes. Leah is still very upset with Chelsea, and to an extent Brooklyn for them being the ones to, in her mind, have told Quinn that she was manipulating Quinn by flirting with him and actually wasn't his friend and didn't like him very much. They had another conversation about it today, and Quinn was like, "I'm so glad we talked about it because it would have really hurt." And she was like, "Exactly, I would never have done that." And so she's still very much anti them, and it seems unlikely that she would kind of turn around on that. So, uh, while I do think it's possible, like you never know where MJ might go. Though she probably will do whatever Tucker wants. But if Tucker doesn't think to ask her in the same way that the Pentagon didn't think to ask her,
Yeah.
you never know where her vote might go. It does feel like Leah is probably pretty set against Brooklyn or Chelsea at this point, at least.
Yeah, it's funny. We haven't mentioned Cam's name like a single time, maybe once in his conversation with Joseph. But when you think of Cam, you have to think of all his fictitious theoretical relationships. And like Leah should be very incentivized to keep Cam alongside of getting rid of Brooklyn and Chelsea because of their whole whatever they are. But it feels like Leah is more so just like I don't want to say out for blood, but she is just upset with Chelsea and Brooklyn. And what I will say, it's probably frustrating for us on the outside seeing Leah just lie to Quinn about what she's been saying.
Oh,
I
I
do
mean,
think,
good on
like,
her. She's completely convinced him.
well, look, that's what you got to do. It's Big Brother. Like, what are you
Yeah.
going to do? Admit it? But I do think she's going to do it a lot less now because
I mean,
she's
she
not
shouldn't have really
just,
done it in the first place.
well, she's not even lying just to the audience or to the house guest. She's kind of lying to the audience too. And I don't think she likes the whole like idea of people seeing her talk behind other people's backs.
Oh,
So
certainly.
secretly, I think this all has kind of worked out for the better for everybody except for Brooklyn and Chelsea.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think you're right. I think that she's not only upset about the perception in the house, but she's upset about the perception in reality. And that's probably why she's constantly monologuing about how she never talks bad about people behind their backs, even though, I mean,
Starting now.
exactly. That is my identity now. And so that is how it always has been. Um, Quinn does have a conversation with Chemo. They talk about Joseph and how he is super close with Tucker. I mentioned this the other day that Quinn, I believe, has discovered that Tucker or that Joseph is likely the one that outed his final two with Brooklyn to Tucker, who then tricked him into thinking it was Brooklyn. So this is kind of like a twofold thing where not only did Joseph reveal information to Tucker that he had confided in Joseph, but Tucker was then able to use that information to really make Quinn look like a fool in thinking that Brooklyn outed it instead. And so I've been wondering, does Quinn actually think this, feel this? And his conversation with Chemo, who is also suspicious of Joseph right now, kind of confirmed to me that I do think he is he's still not, like, fully acknowledging it, but, like, he definitely is suspicious of Joseph and especially, Joseph's relationship with Tucker.
Yeah, that's the part that stood out to me. He was very it almost like felt like more of the energy was directed towards Tucker than Joseph. Because he's like,
Mhm.
why are all of my allies Tucker sycophants now? And it was like very frustrating to him. Um, the problem with Quinn is he can't be picky. Like he doesn't have options. Like Joseph has to be an option. It's his only path. And truly, Joseph wants to work with Quinn. I think him kind of Joseph playing Quinn in this way, it didn't like it hurt him insofar as Quinn's not going to trust Joseph anymore. Outside of that, it's probably fine. But I think Quinn knows he's not in a position to hold grudges at this point. So I don't expect him to confront Joseph today or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Now, Quinn does talk to the cameras. He does recognize, by the way, we've been talking about how Joseph just like took over Quinn's position, which is a very funny storyline because like we clocked it very early. I was like, I think Joseph just wants to be in what Quinn's spot. And then it turned out to be even more true than we thought, where it's even Leah, like even Tikor and Kima. And Quinn is very much like Joseph is just doing what I was doing, but better. He's playing my game better than I played it.
It's so funny though. If Joseph had Quinn's social tools, Quinn
Yeah.
had Joseph's social or strategic restraint, like they would be a great. They would not be a great duo. They would be great as a single entity.
Yeah, combine them, combine their strengths and remove their faults, and they're a really good
Exactly.
player. Um, so he also talks to the cameras. He recognizes, and this is the thing too about Quinn is that you know, he often realizes what he has done wrong.
Yeah.
He just still does wrong things, and then afterwards is like, "Yep, that was a mistake." He'd probably be a great analyst.
He's a great talker. I think everyone knows he's going to be doing stuff like this. But I think a lot of people are finding Quinn so much more endearing now that he's in a position. He's the underdog. He doesn't have any power. He's not getting any information. And shockingly, he's still the same person. Like I never thought he was playing a character to the cameras. He just fully is a character. It's very clear in him talking to anyone in the house. But now he's playing from a totally different position, and I think it's really good for him overall. Like, just on a human level, like, a Quinn dominating a season is not a great reception to Quinn. Like, Quinn needs to be fighting for his life, winning vetoes, trying to pull big moves from the bottom. I don't know if he'll be capable of doing it, but I do like how self-aware he is in his camp talks.
He recognizes he's like, I think I probably exposed the Pentagon a bit early there. I think that I maybe messed up. Um, and he says outright, I don't think I can really trust Joseph, but maybe if I'm able to get Tucker out of the game, I can get him back. So I mentioned this yesterday. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, but when Quinn was saying, there's no way I'm going to go after Tucker now, I said, I don't believe him. Nobody should. Tucker doesn't. Weirdly, a bunch of other people seemed to in the house. But confirmation, he is still going after Tucker. He recognizes that taking Tucker out of the game is still a good thing for him.
I think it was good work by Quinn. I think he sold it very well. The idea of saving me off the block was so nice. Was it his
Yeah.
mom's birthday? Like he had like a lot of like emotional elements to make his point. I think Tucker is just so steadfast anti Quinn, which he should be. So he just doesn't buy it.
Yeah, and it's again, and it's in comparing Tucker, in comparing Joseph and Quinn, because Rubina's going to do some of that later. There is such a stark difference between the emotional component of their games, where like there's no way that Joseph could have sold that in the same way. Like Joseph, could you imagine Joseph trying to be like, "You saved me on my mom's birthday. I will never go after you." Like,
He tries. He really does try. He's like, yeah, Cam, man, thank you so much for talking to me. Like you know, and just does nothing. Like it reminds me of myself a little bit. Like he knows what he's supposed to do, but the execution, it's really hard if that's not you.
yeah. So we like there was even a moment where like Quinn went out and said goodnight with Rubina talking to Tikor and Chemo. And Rubina was like, see, Joseph would never do that. Like Quinn's so much better.
Yeah, he is.
Um, so Tikor is gonna talk to Chemo. And man, can I just say the lack of respect for sleeping people yesterday. Between between Tucker trying to take a nap with MJ and Leah and especially like Tucker has had trouble sleeping to the point that Big Brother is just letting him nap. Uh and yet we're going to continue to hang out in his room and talk while he's there. Come on, guys. And it's like Chemo is a have not. He's struggling. Decor's going to come and wake him up so that they can have their nightly chats.
Yeah.
Like you can't just have one night. You can't just let him sleep. Oh my god. I do not like it when people wake me up.
After being in the house, it's a very empowering feeling to see people talk and then just turn off the laptop and go to bed. it's it's a powerful feeling, and I don't think many people can relate.
Yeah, if my ally woke me up in the middle of the night and it wasn't like a leftovers or forming emergency situation, I'm pretty sure I would turn on them immediately.
Well, I will say it's actually like there is a game element to it that's very kind of wonky. So the more you stay up late at night, the more you get to have those private conversations, right? There's less people awake. Chemo and T-Core can talk without people being suspicious of them, even though everyone already knows they're a duo. But what that leads to is that means you always get called into the DR super late at night. So now you don't really have the option of going to bed early because they have their set
Mm.
schedule. As far as I know, we're not privy to behind the scenes, just being there. And then you kind of get stuck in the I have to stay up late every single night because that's when I do DRs. And they're gonna wake you up if you go to bed. So like, not to defend, the anti-sleepers, Decor and Chemo, but I think they've kind of made their bed and now ironically they have to sleep in it.
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah, so they talk, and Chemo's a little upset because Tucker never checked in on him today. It's like, we check in with each other all the time. Tucker doesn't check in with us. Not
Well, I was
cool.
too busy being monologued to by Leah and Mackenzie.
Exactly. He's spending too much time with Leah and Mackenzie. Um, they want to talk about, like, what would it actually look like to flip this house again, to keep Brooklyn and Chelsea, keep them both. Because again, if they keep Brooklyn, it's great. Chelsea's already drifting away from Brooklyn. Brooklyn is targeting Tucker when not a lot of other people are willing to. It might be worth it. Can we do this? Do we have the pull? What would the numbers be? And it's sounding very similar to the conversations last week that were happening at around this time.
So let me know what you think, Taran. My instinct is it's a trap. This whole thing is a bad idea. It's going to blow up on them. Rabina is not a reliable enough vote against Tucker, and obviously MJ and Lee are not even options. So that's my instinct. It's a trap. Don't do it. But if you're going to do it, I think they need to do the AI arena strategy because that doesn't give Rabina time to go to Tucker and to expose it in their cuddle sessions at night.
I honestly kind of agree. They already have Rubina kind of where they want her. And like even players like MJ, like what they don't want to do is okay, there are obviously two options. And the easiest and most conventional option is just convince Tucker to do what they want. If Tucker's on board, they don't have to flip. It's all
Yeah.
fine. Can they convince Tucker at this point? Seems pretty unlikely. So with that in mind, if they did want to actually make something happen, and I'm not convinced that they should necessarily in this case, but if they did, I do think the most effective method is don't let Tucker know that you're thinking about this. Don't give him the opportunity to start campaigning. Tucker thinks it's all locked in. He doesn't need to do anything. He doesn't need to push Leah and MJ. He doesn't need to make sure that, hey, Quinn, you'd better be voting with me. He's not going to be talking to Rubina and being like, Rubina, you wouldn't vote against what I want, do you? Would you? Without Tucker doing all of that, it's much more possible to like just pull Rubina and be like last second, like, hey, remember what we talked about? Rubina already wants Chelsea to stay. It wouldn't be too far a cry to get her to maybe vote for Brooklyn to stay. Also, might be a little tricky. Um, and so if you try to pull this off last minute, you could pull MJ and be like, "Hey, this is where we're going." Last minute, she doesn't have even a chance to check in with Tucker about it. We've seen her make last minute voting decisions in the past,
Yeah.
and I think you can definitely pull Quinn. I think he's perfectly happy to vote against what Tucker wants, regardless. And so I think it's possible to make it happen. Should they? Is it worth it? That's another question.
If you're gonna take the shot against Tucker indirectly, it makes sense to do it when he can't be HOH next week. And like his only allies who theoretically would like have his back, I guess, would be Joseph and Angela. Theoretically, MJ and Leah might even be in on this flip. So like it's not the worst time to do it. It is still risky because what are the odds Tucker goes next week? Probably not high with all these competitions. And also like because of how passive this house is, I don't think they need to convince MJ and Leah of anything. I think they can walk over to that middle bedroom and say, Cam, 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 Cam. And they're going to hear it and just walk into the diary room and vote that way.
Mhm.
And Joseph will read some body language and vote that way. So, like, the votes will snowball very quickly. I don't anticipate it being like a 5-4 if they try to get this done.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will depend though on like how much Tucker is able to see in the moment. Because I do think if as soon as Tucker catches on, I think he starts pushing back, and I think that Tucker saying last minute, "Don't you dare," is a lot more. has a lot more weight to it. So it's very much in my eyes like, can you prevent Tucker from even realizing it's happening? Um,
The move is
so
in the hallway, in the DR hallway. That's when you flip Rabina.
maybe. They do talk to Rubina, and Rubina agrees. She wants to keep Chelsea as well over Cam. So like she's on board, but Rubina wants to talk to Tucker about it. And that's where it's like, in Tikor and Chemo's mind, it's like, oh, maybe she can convince Tucker. The reality is probably a little more likely that it's like, oh, well, Tucker's going to talk her down. And so, it could theoretically go either way, but like if Tucker talks Rubina down and they don't have Rubina, the flip dies.
The flip is dead. Rabina said they fit together like puzzle pieces.
She did say that.
I've used that line. It's over. The flip is dead. You need someone other than Rabina.
What is that? What is it? Like a puzzle piece. It just like she's just like, is it a height thing?
Is that? I mean, usually puzzle pieces are similar in size, which is not the case with
I'm just
Tucker and
thinking of
Rabina.
is it because is it a spooning thing or is it a different kind of, is it like an interlocking facing each other puzzle?
I'm really glad you asked, Taran.
Yeah.
No, they cut the feeds, which I'm sure this was almost like an ode to you, Taran. They're like, we know what you had to deal with last year. This year, we're gonna quickly give you a Takemo conversation instead.
Something tells me Tucker and Rubina are not talking mad game in the middle of their cuddling sessions.
I think you might be right.
Rubina says she does really want to work with Chelsea and Quinn. Those are the people that she really like. Rubina is actually very pro Quinn. And as I talked about, it's like when Quinn came in, she's like, see, he's great. So Rubina's down to keep Quinn, but also down to keep Chelsea in this moment at least. And she wants to talk to Tucker about Joseph again. She wants to really try and like surprise him in a vulnerable moment with a question to see if like she can really catch him about the final two with Joseph. But also about like, can we maybe keep Chelsea? And so Rubina, this is Rubina saying it, so I expect it actually might happen, this conversation. So that's definitely something to look out for today. Will Rubina talk to Tucker about keeping Chelsea, and how quickly will this get blamed on Tikor and Chemo in that conversation?
And we were somewhat critical of Chelsea just saying, "Oh, I want to work with Tucker," because it seemed a little bit transparent. This all of a sudden is like a real option, right? Because she has been putting up the facade of wanting to keep Tucker. So, like,
Mhm.
if she was doing the Brooklyn strategy, this is dead on arrival instead of just probably dead on arrival.
Yes, and that's and like I said, like conventional strategy is this is the correct thing. It's just Tikor and Chemo in particular
Yeah.
wanted to hear something different. Um, all right. So that's basically what I've got. Corey, anything else you wanted to bring up?
These T-Core chemo, like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. conversations, I've come to peace with not watching them and just getting the updates later because I know what they're going to say. I
Yeah.
like what they're saying, but we'll have no idea if it happens till the live show, which CBS has to cut them an extra check because they're the only ones making this AI arena twist really happen.
And I'm not even kidding. They did say the words last night. We need to talk to Quinn.
So tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern.
I'll be back. I'll be live tonight on Twitch, of course, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. I'll be hanging out watching the episode with all of you. And then afterward, we'll be live on the podcast to talk it all through. And tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, I will be back to update you on Tikor and Chemo talking to Quinn. It's gonna happen. And of course, Rubina talking to Tucker. And me sneezing. And so tune in for that. We'll see if there's a potential flip in the works. We'll see if anything happens there. The AI Arena still likely determining the outcome of this eviction. As of right now, similar to last week, literally all three of them could be evicted in each circumstance. So stay tuned for all of that. And in the meantime, check out the Tastemakers. Check out some other fun stuff we have going on here over at RHAP. Corey, what are you up to?
Twitch.tv/Cory Wurtenberger. Do a lot of Big Brother stuff. Might watch the challenge today. This is the second episode of that. Patreon.com/AmeriCory. We each had the privilege of interviewing Felicia. Not really interviewing, more just chatting. I can say with great happiness, Taran, she does now finally know that Jared ratted out Brown Sugar Babes. It is it is confirmed. She is fully aware. And the final thing I have to announce is America and I are doing a watch party in Nashville, September 5th.
Ooh,
It might be a double eviction for all we know, 2 Thursdays from now. But yeah, we're going to be posting the RSVP and all that stuff later. So if you're in the area, check that out.
very fun. All right. Well, that is what we have for you then today. Thank you all so much for joining us, and I will see all of you